on how to nest in Cypcut.
Okay, you can see here that we've got the job that we just finished up on the previous video. Hopefully you've watched that one and you've watched all the other videos, and now you got your machine running. You've got the basics of the interface, how you can navigate it and do your basic cutting and create arrays. Now you've got a big job order for several parts that you need to cut, and you want to nest them so that you can cut multiple versions and get them oriented, and maximize your plate materials and the overall productivity. So let's talk about the nesting in Cypcut here. So the first thing I'm going to do is just get this back down to the original part, and I'm just highlighting the ones I don't want, and we'll delete those because we already have these set up with our lead ins and lead outs, and we've still got our offset in here, as you can see, remember from the previous video. And so this part is really ready to cut. The only thing we might want to do to keep all these from dropping out if we were going to cut this is add a micro joint in this spot right here while we add our micro joint. So I'm going to come up, I've got the outside of this selected. I'm going to come up here to micro joint and say auto micro joint, and we're going to add a micro joint of about 60 thousandths here. And if you see that, now that part, has got a small little tab on it, and that'll keep it from dropping out when we do the cutting. So let's just say that you've got an order for 1,000 of these, and we've got other parts that we're going to cut as well, all out of 1/4 inch plate or 6mm plate. So I'm going to right click on this and say add to parts library. And if you just needed about any single one of these, they give you some presets here. You can just click that and add 5, or you can go to the bottom and say input count. So I'm going to put 1,000 of these in here. And this sort of takes you into the nesting mode. So you can see that it's got the one that we've done plus the 999, and it's showing us what the dimensions are right there. So we've got that added to our parts library. And if you look down here in the bottom left hand corner, you can see that we've got parts, plate, and nest plate, and we'll be looking at that in more detail when we get ready to cut these out. So we got our first part added to this nest of large batch of 1/4 inch parts that we need to cut. So let's bring in another part. So the way you do that is just go just like you normally would. We've shown you the whole time. And so file, import, DXF, and I'm going to sort this by name, bring up these parts right here. And you notice when I click that, it's going to let you import this and place it wherever you want. So I'm just going to put it out here in space. And you can see it scaled those parts wrong. Again, I'm just going to scale this very quickly. All right, so now those are at the general size that they should be, so we can add those to the parts library. So these are a bunch of gussets and things that we want to cut here. They have some features and so forth. Normally we would before we would add these to the parts library, we would go to each one of these and say and put our leads and lead ins and lead outs and all that, get our layers set correctly. And let me take a minute now. We've showed you the sort on a previous video. So the sort method for this particular part right here, you can come up here and set that. Once you highlight it, you can say right to left, left to right. There's another sort in the nesting area that you can look at also. So we may want different quantities of each of these. Let's say, we're going to right click on this one and say add to parts library, and we want 10 of those, and you can see it populated that over here. And this one right here, add to parts library, and we're going to do a custom input and put 100 of these in there. And you may say this whole section right here, we need 200 of each of those. So I'm going to go input count. And you see that it broke those out individually over here, each one of those, and added an entry for 200. And same thing here. We'll just get them all added. And so you can see how this is working. You can just keep adding parts, and how many you need of each one. We'll do 100 of these. We want to get quite a few in here, and you can see all those are added. And I'm going to add 500 each of these. So life is good. We got lots of business. We got lots of parts to cut. We need to maximize it so that we're cutting all of our 1/4 inch material or 6mm material at the same time. And so we've got all of our parts added over here. 900 of those gussets, 10 of those, 100 of those, 200 of each of all these, and 500 of these down here. So now we've, and you can go and change this, so once these get in here and you don't like the quantity that selected, so we said we wanted 10, we can just make that 20. And so now we have 20 of those in there. So you can adjust that, here before we start cutting and creating the nesting on it. After you've created all of that, you can go in a few different areas, but you can come up here and click Nest. And that brings up our nesting dialog box. This is selected, all parts only. And you can select, individual parts, things like that. You can see we have, standard plates here, and there's one already in there that is of a specific size. We could make this 96 by 48 for a 4x8 plate. And you can go ahead and name it. You could say this is hot rolled A36, and the thickness is 0.25, and that way you've got a standard plate set up over here in your plates, and you can just pick from that in the future. You got some options over here for the different settings and so forth that we can select, and the method, and if you want to cut a remnant, and if you select that, you're going to get some options for how you want the remnant to be. So it'll just basically add a line. So we'll do that. We'll add a line, and you'll see on the very last sheet that it'll automatically add the remnant cutoff line to separate your usable drop from the rest of your offcut that you want to discard. And you can click on this detailed settings here and get more details. So we could set our parts gap, how far we want that to be between parts, and I'm going to make it 0.2. That's a good number. You can get closer than that if you want to, but I'm going to add 0.2. And our plate margin, how much room do you want to leave around the edges of the plate? I think a 1/4 inch is probably good on that. The strategy is array. You have very little options on rotation angle. Other nesting software, will let you rotate down to a shorter degree, but 45 degrees is the smallest that you can nest here. Auto combine parts, you can, select that. That's where it will combine parts together and nest within nest. The auto optimize, you can select that if you want it to try to orient the parts in different ways, and give you different options on that. You can select that, and right here you can change this number to say 5. Well, it will run through the algorithm multiple times, up to 5 times, to see what kind of looks you can get to give you what it would look like. Here's our remnant, and we can say line on that, and keep going down. So the co-edge is where it's the same thing as common line cutting. So if you have certain brackets, you can select co-edge, and it will edge those together. And you can select auto co-edge or have it automatically co-edge. So this is something you want to experiment with and cut some samples to see if you like how it's doing the co-edge. When you do co-edge, your micro joints don't work quite as well, especially in thicker materials. and it has a tendency to drop parts out at random times and cause issues. But that's it. You really have not a lot of options. I'm going to turn the co-edge off altogether on this first run, and I'm going to click OK, and you're going to see this come up and show you that it's working through the number of pieces. And I'm going to pause the video right now, and we will pick back up when it's complete. Okay, you can see what it's done here. And if we zoom in, these are all of our nested parts. You can see some of them are rotated in different ways to make them fit better, but also maintaining our parts gap. And you can see our remnant line. It's gonna, at the very end, it's going to cut that line and leave you with a partial sheet. But be careful with that remnant. I don't know why it does this, but it puts that on a different layer, and you want to make sure you go and set it to the same, to the layer that you want, so that it uses the tool, the correct cut parameters to cut that. But over on the left, again, if you scroll right down in this bottom left corner here, you see we have nest plate, plate, and parts. So if we just click on the parts, and I'm going to kind of pan up here, you can see the parts tab has all of our parts and all of the quantities listed, and they now show 0 of whatever the quantity is, because that's showing you the status. How many of those parts has it cut yet? And as it starts to cut, those will populate. And then if you click on plate, this is simple. All the way up at the very top, we've created our single blank plate for the nesting. And then if you come back down in the tab here, in the nest plate, now you see all of those parts that we created, and starting with the very first one. So what you're going to do is click on this very top one here, and if you see over in the window, so you can see the very top one here and all of its nested parts, and the next 4x8 sheet down and all of its nested parts, and you can see the different parts that it's got in here, the different part types all nested together all the way down. So this is going to have us, all those parts that we added for this job out of 1/4" material is going to take us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 13 full sheets and 14, and another partial sheet, about 3/4 of another one. So 13 3/4 sheets is what you're going to need to cut this job. So I think it's, even as a pricing tool to figure out, you can do a quick nest of how many parts the customer's asking you for, figure out how many sheets you're going to need based on what Cypcut can do with its nesting. Okay, so let me show you this real quick. If you see all of these parts closely nested in hot rolled steel, cutting with oxygen, you are going to not want to use, if you go up here to the sort routine, you can manually select the sort order, and you want to have this randomly jumping around. And the way you do that is, so the very first part that's going to cut, we're going to select that one, and from there we're going to select that one, and from there we're going to select that one, and from there we're going to select this one, so that you don't have a lot of heat input into a given area of the plate. It will, if you have your parts closely nested in thicker materials, it will heat up the plate very quickly, and you're going to lose some of your cut quality. The piercing's going to start to act weird. You want to definitely go and have it jumping around. Otherwise, it's going to follow the sort order that you can set in the other part of Cypcut, which is going to be up in this area right here that we've showed you before. And this allows you to manually override. Now, if you've nested a bunch of thin stainless material parts out of stainless or anything that you're cutting with nitrogen, you don't need to do this. This is only for hot rolled steel or anything that you're cutting with oxygen that's thicker material that's going to put a lot of heat into the plate. All right, so let's go back and let's go and select all of these. And so right here you can select those, and we can just say delete selected results to get rid of these plates that we've nested. And I want to show you the co-edge real quick. And again, delete selected plates. Delete that. Now we're back to our parts again. And you can see all of our parts that we added are still there. And you can change the quantities of parts, but we've just deleted all of our nesting results. Okay, so now let's go create the nest again, and I want to show you what this co-edge can do, or the common line cutting. So if we if we have all of our settings here, we are we're coming on down, and so we could say co-edge all. So now that we have co-edge set, I'm going to click OK, and it's going to nest all that again. And we'll go take a look at what that actually does. Okay, so now we've got the co-edge ran, and you can see examples of what that looks like here. So you can see where it found edges that were straight and common, the right angle and so forth. And you can fine tune this. You can see some of them it did, some of them it didn't. It's honestly a little bit random in how it works, but the one thing that will happen is you will lose your micro jointing, and these parts will just sort of drop out, and you can get tip ups really easy with the co-edge. So let's see if it changed the number of plates by doing the co-edge by any significant amount. So we had 13 3/4 before, and now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. All right. So the co-edging helped us by, it changed it from 13 3/4 plates to roughly 13 and a little less than a half. So it really, over the course of a big job, didn't help us at all, and it caused a lot of problems. Now, if you have a bunch of rectangle parts, it may be entirely different, and you may have better luck with it. So, but anyway, that'll wrap up this video. Hopefully that gives you a good overview of the nesting capabilities. I will say it's decent. If you're a high production shop and you've got a big machine with an exchange table, you would want to look at external nesting software. There's some made specifically for Cypcut, made in China. There's Sigma Nest, made in the USA. Hypertherm has ProNest. Those may have issues because they may not be able to give you post-processors for Cypcut, but you'd want to explore all of your options if you're into nesting lots of small parts.